Welcome back, everyone. So we're going to have a conversation about the value of music in the age of streaming. I'm going to give you a short introduction of our two speakers. The first one is Dr. Olaf Meinking. He's a media lawyer, music and sports manager, and entrepreneur based in Hamburg. He works with the German music legend, Marius Müller-Westernhagen, and the singer-songwriter Clouseau, with the head coach of Paris Saint-Germain, Thomas Tuchel, and among others. He is one of the two spokesmen of the German artist management initiative Fair Share. And our second speaker is Cherie Hu, who's a journalist and award-winning writer and researcher focusing on innovation in the global music business. Her newsletter, Water and Music, reaches over 7,000 subscribers and has over 400 paying members on Patreon. She's written for Billboard, Forbes, NPR Music, Music Business Worldwide, Pitchfork, Rolling Stone. This list just goes on and on and on. So she's guest lectured at New York University, spoken at over 30 conferences, and is working on a book currently for Bloomsbury about the parallels between independent music careers and tech entrepreneurship. So I'm going to let you guys take over.
Thank you so much. Can people see and hear me? I'm going to assume yes, unless I hear anything otherwise. Yeah, thank you so much for that kind introduction. And thank you, Olaf, for joining this conversation. I'm super excited for all the topics we're going to dive into. I realize we don't have too much time to dive into what is definitely an important and also very complex and multi-layered issue. Just to kind of lay some of the backdrop in terms of context, I feel like this conversation around kind of the value of music in the age of streaming, about alternative streaming payment models, which we'll be focusing on today, has been going on for several years now, but is kind of gaining more momentum, especially this year. I believe it was just on Monday when Spotify announced this new feature that's kind of like an advertising feature where artists can, get more promotion in Spotify's autoplay and radio features in exchange for a promotional or lowered royalty rate. So the timing of that was very interesting and probably not the best optics for them in terms of this conversation. We have governments around the world, including the UK government, launching investigations into streaming economics. So there's kind of not only critique, but also investment and interest from all sides and not just from the artist community. So Olaf, just to start off, I think just to lay the groundwork for this conversation, which will focus on kind of newer or alternative ways of compensating artists in a streaming context, I think it would be great to debunk a very common myth, especially among artists and music fans, about how streaming payments work. In particular, what I've seen in the media is that there is a lot of conversation around, per stream royalty rates, and kind of the assumption below that is that streaming services pay by the stream, when in reality that is not true at all. So if you could kind of address that and kind of debunk that, I think that would be a great place to start.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cherie. Thank you very much, and good to see you.
Likewise.
You're in New York City, so very interesting these days.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's a whole separate full day of conversation, yeah.
We talked before, and I just told you that I see the world always from a artist perspective. So I work as a lawyer, consultant, and manager for many musicians in Germany. I'm also one of the spokesmen of the Fair Share initiative in Germany. We are representing just a huge number of very successful artists, and We're on the one hand side, we're a huge supporter of the streaming of the DSPs, because streaming just is a game changer in the industry, and it will be the one and only marketing and distribution platform within a few months from now on. So, and on the other hand side, we are criticizing these DSPs and the streaming platforms for a number of reasons. And just the three main reasons are that we feel that there is a lack of transparency within the accounting system. We're not happy, as a second point, with the number of manipulations in the system. And the third is, we would, as a group of Fair Share, for example, and also myself, we would prefer a user-centric or user time-centric accounting and billing system. This would be, from my perspective, fairer, and this should be something we maybe discuss. So you mentioned some points from today or yesterday, when Spotify agrees upon a fact, which I would say this marks up a kind of end as an independent streaming platform, and a move towards a marketing and service provider. If you talk with the major companies about how they can pay a little bit more to make the business model better and better, but it would just, they would leave also their platform as an independent platform. So this is something that just for me is a very relevant step in the history of Spotify, and we should all be aware of that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad that you framed it that way. With that specific piece of news, Spotify seems to look more and more like a Facebook for the music industry than, like, to your point, kind of a more independent, supposedly kind of leveled consumption platform. You mentioned a bunch of things that I want to break down further. So first is the user-centric payment system, which has also been gaining more momentum. I believe earlier this year or last year, Deezer announced they would be piloting the system, and they've been one of the, probably the only major DSP to kind of speak out about that. Would you mind just kind of in summary, breaking down how exactly that is different from the current streaming model that we see? Because I think a lot of fans probably actually think it's user-centric, when in reality it's quite different.
Yeah, so right now, if you would ask just a regular premium customer of a DSP, what he thinks where his money goes. So if he pays €9.99 or dollar for his subscription, I definitely think that just the majority of the users, they think that the money will go to the artist and the music they're listening to. But the fact is, all the money goes into one pool system. We all know that. And then it's divided through a pro rata system. And just the opposite would be a user-centric, or even better, a user time-centric payment system, which would just put the subscription money of each customer exactly to the artist they are listening to. And this would, for me, mean just a huge difference from the current system, because it would be much more fairer. Many artists would participate from that, and it would stop, the influence of manipulation from different sides, because now the whole manipulation is based on this click system. They're using these 30 seconds on Spotify to gain a huge number of clicks to earn money. And this would change immediately if we would introduce or change to a user-centric or user time-centric.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And just to, I guess, also clarify how that would work. So, so to your example about like the $9.99 and like where that money is flowing. So right now, so I actually personally, I don't listen that much to top 40 artists, but right now the reality is that most of my money, or most of the pool of subscriber revenue from Spotify, is going to kind of the top 1% of the 1% of artists. Whereas in a user-centric payment system, if I'm listening to, I think this actually is a great opportunity for kind of more localized music scenes or regional music scenes. Because say if I only listen to up and coming rappers in New York or up and coming artists in Germany, through my streaming subscription, all of my money would go directly to them, as opposed to like go through this admittedly kind of opaque system to like bigger artists. And also, I would love for you to elaborate on the time aspect. I think this is a super interesting element of how streaming payments work today. That is definitely, I think it definitely incentivizes certain kinds of music to be released. So could you explain, I guess, more about like how that works now, and then like what kinds of artists or genres you think are left behind in this model, and then kind of on the flip side of that would benefit from like a time-centric payment system?
I would say this just it's much more fairer, because it should be the customer who decides where his money goes. And in the old times, when you just walked into a record store and you bought a record or an album of your favorite artist, so you would always have the right to play it once or 100,000 times. It would make no difference. So if a premium user, just say coming from the old world, and he spends his 99 euro each month on listening only to one artist, like say he's listening to Pink Floyd all the time, I don't see any reason why this money should be brought to any German rap artist, for example. I mean, there is no reason. It should be the customer. Just we should focus on the customer and his decision on the music he's listening to. And once again, the system would prevent us from this manipulation system that operates with massive short clicks, because 30 seconds are enough to register your song. And if you run, let's say, 100 cell phones or 1,000 cell phones, and you're only listening to your own song for 30 seconds, you can just you can come to results that you do not want to have, even if they are legal, even if it should be legal to listen to your own music. But it's not what the system is meant to be. The system is meant to be customers, fans, supporters decide about the music, their artist, and if they decide to distribute their money on one artist, which is an extreme example, but it shows how it would work, so then it's okay. Or if someone is listening for 2 hours to classical music, I don't see any reason why this should be accounted time-based. So this is maybe only one song for I don't know, in jazz for 30 or 40 minutes. And last but not least, it cannot be the aim of a digital platform to change the style of music. Right now, we are just have songs with a length up to 2 minutes or less. And these songs are produced exactly to get as much clicks as you can. And it's like, this should be not our focus, that music is produced and written to be successful on a digital service provider platform, but should be successful for the people who wants to listen to it. This is my biggest concern if we would stay to this pro rata system.
Mm-hmm. That's super interesting. Just to like push back on that a little bit. I mean, so one thing that I've seen, just to push back on like your last comment about like, so I do agree that platforms, like Spotify should not be like dictating this is how you should be making music. I think Daniel Ek had a kind of notorious interview that came out a couple months ago where he said, it's not enough for artists to release, an album every like 3 to 4 years and expect that will be enough. That obviously drew a lot of backlash from the industry. On the other hand, I think throughout the history of technology, music has always tailored itself to the format. And I guess this is more like in the commercial music industry. But if you look at like radio, people have always made radio singles to like, tailor them to be catchier at the beginning so that people would, stay on listening. When vinyl records first came out, the fact that, 2 sides of a vinyl record could only fit like 45 minutes of music. That's why so many of That's why so many albums today, even still in the age of streaming, are still 45 to 50 minutes long. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting like trend there. And so that's something that I think will be hard to avoid. I think as long as platforms have certain incentives, people will like always want to tailor, their music to fit those incentives. It like regardless of the platform's involvement. But I guess what you're saying is like, is there a way to maybe like change the incentives? We don't necessarily have to take this as given. We don't necessarily have to, take the ever shortening length of music and like the shorter attention spans as given. I don't know if that's what you're saying, or if you have any thoughts on like that kind of incentive structure that I think is inherent in any format that we're thinking about.
And we have a question from Yara.
Definitely address audience questions now.
Yeah.
The user-centric model. Okay, so this actually is a really good question. I'll just read it out loud from Yara. In the user-centric model, what percentage of the customer's subscription money would actually go to the artist versus the label or to the publisher? This is raises an important point that Olaf, I would love for you to speak on as well, is the fact that in the conversation about the streaming economy, we really just can't point fingers at the streaming platforms. This is a very complicated ecosystem of platforms, rights holders, and governments. And each of those players have their own responsibility for making the ecosystem more equitable. But yeah, I'll leave it there. I would love if you could speak on that or address that question.
So this is something I would like to know. We're just with our little fair share initiative. We've been in talks with Universal Music, with Sony Music, with many people from the music industry. And we have a lack of transparency in these agreements. And this is, for me, one of the problems we have to solve. So right now, the contracts between the streaming services and the big music companies, like the major record companies, are not transparent. So most of these contracts are made with the American, Californian entities, headquarters, and only a few people within the companies have exact information about what revenues are passed on to the local companies and according to what criteria the deductions with these companies are agreed. So, but basically it depends all I know is that it depends how strong is your position on negotiating your shares. Let's say a major company has a much stronger position than an independent. That's why many independents go through Merlin or other groups of independent companies. But basically, I assume that about 30% will be with Spotify in the end. I guess that approximately 12% goes to the publishing companies, which is included GEMA in Germany or other collecting rights societies, which distribute the money from there. And between 52 and 58% of the monies earned are given to the right owners. And rights owners are the record companies. Basically, if you have master license agreements, like in the past, if you have changed, if you're a rap artist and you're doing distribution agreements, you will have these 58% or less. But if the money goes to a record company, then these 58% will go directly to your company. And the company, they account the share of the artist on the basis of the old standard master license agreements, which we called Bandübernahmeverträge in Deutschland, which means master license agreements. And the share of the artist in the end will be approximately something between 18 and 25% net of what the rights owners get, which are these 58%. And this is, from my perspective, far too less. We have to talk. We have many people all around the world, musicians, who ask for, let's say, a standard rate of one cent per stream or something like that. But I mean, this is a huge income. The market in Germany is about 750 million euro a year now. But if our artists only get, let's say, 20% or 58% from 100, that's far too less. That is not fair. And just from my position, from the artist position, we have to change the system at that point. And 30% distribution fee, of course, they set up the whole company and we are happy that they are there. Because before streaming, there was nothing. There was piracy, illegal downloading. So it's all good. But the system of this, within the system, there has to be a fair division of the income. So long talk for a short question.
Yeah, I guess follow-up question, which actually goes into another question from the audience. So yeah, I think it's good that you kind of broke out how, like, kind of the share of how subscription revenue will be generated. And one reality is that, to my knowledge, no major DSP is profitable. All major DSPs are losing money. And this is less of a concern for like the Apple Musics and Amazon Musics of the world, which are housed under these, major global tech conglomerates. It's more of an issue for a company like Spotify that doesn't have kind of a parent company or other revenue streams to back it up. And this is something that I find complicated about the ask that, Spotify increase its royalty rates, for example, to like a certain rate. In the current situation, with the current contracts with rights holders, the reality is that if it were to increase royalty rates, it would lose even more money. And like, for especially Wall Street investors, shareholders, that's definitely not a good sign, for at least from that point of view. So yeah, I'm curious as to how you think about that. Like, of course, it is so important to I guess for artists to be more properly compensated for consumption around their music. It is also super important for these services themselves to be able to sustain. Otherwise, we don't even have a streaming economy. So yeah, just what are your thoughts on that? And like, I guess how we balance those two sides.
Yeah, you're right. So in the end, both sides are right. But I mean, if you have a share of 30% in the streaming or something around 30% as a streaming platform, you should be able to run your system, because your system as an independent distribution company or streaming company should be that 30% must be enough. Otherwise, something is wrong in your system. You have too many overhead costs or whatever. But Spotify is not doing advertising for the artist outside their own system. They are just, I mean, you put in your music into the system, and as long as it is structured as today, and they're not working as a kind, let's say, substitution for a record company, I don't see the chance for a bigger share. So, and it's not the decision of the artist to say that something about $10 or euro are the correct money. I think when they started and when they entered the market, these $9.99 or $10 system was created to find as many people as possible in the different markets. And now it's maybe time for a change, and maybe they have to explain to their listeners that there is a certain value of music and there is a certain meaning of music for the cultural life and for our political life. And it's still that the way people express themselves through music means not only earning money. I mean, they come from a political, social side. And it's very important for our societies, for all of us, for our political system, that these people are paid on an amicable basis, which can be agreed between all companies. And maybe they have to increase the costs to, I don't know, $12.99 or whatever, or we need different grades of accounts. Let's say a standard account, a premium account, and maybe a top class account, so that you can, or that you have more access to catalog or special recordings or live recordings. But I see this is the job of Spotify and the record companies, and not the job of the artist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just quickly, part of that question, I think, was addressing something we got from the audience. Elise had asked if we think that $10 a month for consumers to access endless music is enough. And to your point, and to something we discussed earlier as well, it's very normal for many other streaming services and other industries to raise prices. Netflix has done that a couple of years, like every couple of years, and initially they get a ton of backlash, but then things go back to normal, and their churn rate is actually super low and is like kind of gold standard in the streaming economy. So, and I know Spotify has been experimenting with increased prices more so in Europe. I haven't seen any experiments with that in the US. So, but that's definitely good to see. I just saw a question from Denis, I'm saying the name, or Dennis, which is also like going to something I wanted to follow up on, which you had just said, that, you know, a lot of this is the responsibility of Spotify and the record companies, but not of the artists. So then what is the role of the artist? If an artist, you know, is watching this and saying, like, what can we do if ultimately we're not taking the decisive action? Kind of what role do they play in this conversation?
Yeah, just the question is, how can we make pressure to make that change? Yeah, I see two levels what we have right now. The first level is that we have to start negotiations with the big record companies, also with independent companies, of course, and they should make direct contact with the streaming platforms. I mean, there are three parties in the world. It's the artist, that's the label, and that's the streaming platform. And most of the artists, they do not have a direct relationship with the DSPs, with the digital service providers. So the artists or the licensors, the rights owners, they have to put pressure on their labels, and the labels have to work on these three essential points that I mentioned: the lack of transparency, manipulation, and another billing system. So this is the first level. We have negotiations with our labels, amendments to the agreements, because there is a big difference if you sell a record and get a proper license for that with all the costs of manufacturing and GEMA and etc., and just putting music into a streaming platform, which is far less expensive than selling and making records. And the second level is that we have to involve the authorities in the different countries to check if the system as it is today is correct. This is a very dangerous step because we put something from the inside of the music industry to the outside. If we would just walk into the huge buildings of the trust authorities in, for example, Germany, or even within the European Union, but in the end, this market, which is a young market, should maybe be checked and controlled. And but before we do that, I would very kindly ask all of them, and would try to find a solution between the companies, the record companies and the DSPs, to install, for example, independent control authorities, or maybe an electronic security system, which improves the system as it is. And I do not see it as a kind of confrontation towards the DSPs. I see it more as a partnership to say, well, you started a few years ago. It's absolutely normal that you have problems and things have to be changed from all sides. It's a kind of development. It's the same with the technology development. It's a logical step from a CD to a streaming service, and nobody wants to stop that. It's very important. But in the end, we should install independent authorities, independent controlling systems. I'm convinced of that for 100%. And to avoid manipulation and to have a better transparency, but also maybe it's necessary to bring in trust authorities to check the system and if it's correct or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was a while ago, but I feel like governments have been doing this and there actually has not been that much change. So I'm thinking of in Norway, for example, like local governments there have been looking into Tidal and like allegations of data manipulation there for a while, and like nothing has really come out of it. It's kind of surprising to me how like I guess ambiguous that specific case is. And from my understanding, I think Spotify so Spotify compared to other DSPs, I think their like fraud detection system is actually decent, but of course there's a lot of room for improvement. But so do you think, I guess I would love to get your thoughts specifically on like the situation around Tidal. If you followed that, do you feel like anything will come out of that? What, if anything, can maybe improve around like that specific conversation?
Yes, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we have to just find out who has mistreated the system so far. And if there is only one manipulation on the theoretical basis, only one. So every accounting system statement all over the world would not be correct. This is what we have to be aware of. And therefore, we have to work together and we have to strengthen the system. But we have to bring in our points and we have to be like, I just see the question again, they are losing money from Yara. And the question is, how shall we get a bigger share, even if the DSPs are losing money? But just again and again, I mean, it's not the problem of the artists that they lose money. What they all do is they earn a lot of money by giving third parties shares in their company. So if you look at a company like Tencent, they're investing in major record companies and also in streaming platforms. So they see on the long run very valuable companies on the horizon. I mean, even if they lose money, as many tech companies today, this system of bringing music to people, because music is such an essential part of our life, will be for the future such a strong platform and a monopoly, so that they will earn money. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but in the long run, these companies will be very successful because they just have the control over the market right now. They have the shares. They have the direct access to people. They know who is streaming what kind of music. And this big data game is so important to sell other products and services. So if you know something about the people, or if you know something about your customers, to be more precisely, then you are the winner in the future, for sure. And I would say all the money they lose now is very good invested money. So I cannot be just say that I'm afraid they are losing money. So they will earn money for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think also what Yara was trying to get at in her question is not just about DSPs losing money, but also about the fact that music streaming as it currently is, or like how I understand it, is 100% a commodity. And in a commodity world, it's going to be a race to the bottom on price. So like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, they all have basically the same, tens of millions of tracks on their services. And so there's really not that much differentiation. And so in that environment, it doesn't make much sense for, one company to raise their price while everyone else is offering a better deal for this commodity. I'm curious as to like your thoughts on that fact that all these services are offering the same thing, and thinking about like the value of music. Do you think there's a world where like streaming services can have more exclusive content or more exclusive offerings? Or is there a way to make payment more equitable in this environment where all services are basically the same thing?
For sure. Yeah. So in the end, we only have a few minutes to go. I would always say, let's reconsider and change the system. So we're happy to have the streaming system, but just there's so many points right now which we cannot accept from an artist side. And just right now, we kindly ask them to be more transparent, but in the future, we will ask. And in the end, I think it's so important that all market players understand that fairness and transparency are the essential values for this industry. So, and not only this industry, maybe for the whole, let's say, economy for the future, that of any kind of cultural production. We just a fair share, a fair remuneration in the system for the artist who brings in all content, the music, the compositions, the lyrics, the artwork, everything. And this must be something that is comparable to the income of artists in the past. So, and just, we cannot accept that they argue over their price, which is acceptable in the market. We must argue that just the sense or the just deeper meaning of copyright was always that people get money for their music, for their art, that they can live with this money. And if just music would be just a hobby for people, it just, we would lose a very important part of our cultural scene all around the world.
Great. Yeah, I think that actually is all the time that we have for our conversation. We could definitely, like go on for much longer about all of these topics. But yeah, I appreciate you, Olaf, taking the time. Thanks everyone for listening. I guess just to close off quickly, you mentioned you're part of this Fair Share initiative. What ways, if people are interested in joining or learning more, where can they find out more information?
About our little initiative?
Yeah.
We have been established last year in October. So, and we were a very small group of managers and lawyers, and we're representing just very successful German artists, from Helene Fischer to Herbert Grönemeyer, from Westernhagen to Clouseau, from Peter Maffay to Nico Santos. So, and we're just, our artists are not worldwide artists, but we have a strong position in Germany. And we are trying to put pressures both on our labels, also on the DSPs, and we're talking about it. And we
is it like a closed coalition, or is there like an open application?
We're open. But it was the idea to have a kind of, let's say, guerrilla group of very successful artists coming together, and we feel that this is a very good idea, and we feel that we can have influence, and many people in the business will have the benefit from this little development that we have started. So we're pretty happy so far, but we will not stop.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much again for taking the time. Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you.